Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our first presentation this year, addressing how people of diverse faiths relate the guidance of their traditions to honoring Mother Nature. Our second panel discussion will take place tomorrow, also at 7 p.m. by Zoom, and will include a panel representing local members of the Buddhist, Sikh, Baha'i, and Brahma Kumari traditions. I pasted an online address for you in the chat box, so you can get a link tomorrow if you want to attend that session. This program this evening includes a panel representing local members of the Jewish, Zoroastrian, and Christian communities, and we also have a presentation from the Islamic community. Each presentation will be about 8 minutes. At the end of these 4 talks, we will discuss your questions, which you may please enter at any time into the QA box. Please don't use the chat box, but the Q/A box at the bottom of your screen, and directing them to whomever you wish, any particular member of the panel or to all the panel members. Our first speaker is Mr. Fred Desai, who was born in India and has lived in America for over 40 years. He is employed as the senior engineer of the Research and Development Department at Procter & Gamble Corporation here, and leads the climate pillar of the Sustainability Champion team at the Winton Hills site. He is active in the Zoroastrian Association of Kentucky, Ohio, and Indiana as their highest ranking priest. Fred and his wife Becca have been involved in many interfaith activities in the greater Cincinnati area, and his passion for the environment is demonstrated in his work with the Green Umbrellas and Equations Education and Lifestyles organization. Moreover, he has, in the last 4 years, been responsible for encouraging over 200 people to participate in Eco Challenge, which is a month-long commitment by individuals to take concrete action steps for sustainability. Fred?
Thanks, Steve. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to talk about Zoroastrianism and how caring for creation, caring for nature is important in our religion. So from the time you can go to the next slide, Joey. From the time our prophet Zarathustra founded our religion about 4,000 years ago till today, caring for creation has been very important in Zoroastrian's life. When Prophet Zarathustra initially was looking for answers to the problems he was seeing in the world, he immersed himself in nature. He spent several years in nature, observing nature, contemplating on the meaning of life, and he got his revelation from God while he was in nature, immersed in nature. He coined the term Asha, which stands for order in nature. He saw that everything happens, in an orderly manner in nature. The sun rises and sets, the seasons come about, plants grow and die. So the concept of Asha, which stands for order, is a very important concept in Zoroastrianism. And Asha also stands for righteousness in Zoroastrianism. You can go to the next slide, Joey. So there are very important principles in our Zoroastrian faith called the Amesha Spentas. Amesha Spentas have a dual role in our religion. On one end, they are the attributes of God. They are the qualities that God has, which we need to imbibe in us to become good human beings. And on the other hand, they also represent creations of nature, which, because we give them importance, we need to take care of them. So those 7 qualities are given over here. Spenta Mainu, which is the progressive Holy Spirit, which represents God himself. And man is the human creation, the creation on earth, representing Spenta Mainu, or the Holy Progressive Spirit. The next one is the good mind, Vahumana, and the animal kingdom is represented by that. And so on and so forth, fire, metals, earth, water, plant kingdom. So you can see that Zoroastrians give a lot of importance to how we can lead our lives like God, be godlike by having these attributes in our lives, and also think of these creations of nature and take care of them. Next slide, please, Joey. In our calendar, we don't have dates like first, second, third, etc. Instead, we have names for each of those days of our months. And those names represent the qualities of God and also the creations of nature. So, for example, if you look at number 7, Amardad, it stands for undyingness, immortality, and the plant kingdom is associated with that. So, on that day, we would remember plants, maybe do something about plants, and by thinking about it, we take care of the creation that Mother Nature has given us. On day 10, you can see is Ava Roj, which is for water. And many times when it's Ava Roj, many Zoroastrians go to a body of water, like a river or an ocean, stand there, offer some flowers and sugar to the water, thank the water for giving us life, because without water, nobody would be able to live on Earth. Next slide, please. Um, a ceremony that we have in our religion is called the Jashan. Jashan basically is a ceremony to bless the home or to bless some occasion. So, for example, if somebody moves into a new home or they get a job, they might call the priest to do a ceremony to bless their home and their families. In the Jashan ceremony, all the 7 creations that I talked about in the previous slide are represented. There is man, there is milk representing water, there are fruits. Of course, there is a ground that the priest is sitting on, and there is sky above. So everything is represented, reminding us to think of Mother Nature and also the qualities of God while the priests are praying this prayer. Next slide, please. Um, Another tradition that we've had in ancient Iran and even sometimes in the United States and in India is a festival called the Gahambar. A Gahambar is a festival where all Zoroastrians and even non-Zoroastrians, rich and poor, get together and they all have a feast together. They'll all bring some food from their home and they'll all sit down and collectively have a good time together. In the olden times, gambars were done during different phases of the agricultural cycle. Because it was an agricultural society in the olden days, they would have a gambar when they would plant the seeds. They would have a gambar when they would harvest the crop, and several gambars like that. Basically, just reminding people that at the end of the day, we are all one and we should live like one, rich and poor all together. Next slide, please. The concept of the Tower of Silence. In the ancient times in Iran, they used to put the dead bodies on mountaintops, and in the hot sun, and with vultures and other scavenger birds, the body would be eaten up, and then they would dispose of the bones in the ground. The reason it was done is because we did not want to put body in the fire because fire is considered holy. And when a body is dead, we believe um, it may have some evil in it because it is destroyed. The body is destroyed by evil. Um, in India, we have a few towers of silence where people go in the big city like Mumbai. There is a place which has a lot of wooded area around it, and they would place the body inside the Tower of Silence, and then the vultures would come and eat it. When I look at Mother Nature, every creation, plant kingdom, animal kingdom, everything gets recycled in nature, excepting us human beings who either want to put ourselves in boxes in the ground or we want to burn ourselves, but we don't want to get recycled in nature. But this is a very beautiful way to be one with nature once you leave this world. Next slide, please. I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Well, Fred, thank you very much for your insights into the Zoroastrian faith. the Zoroastrian faith view of nature and our spiritual relationship to it. Folks, please enter your questions into the Q&A box down there at the bottom of your screen. Our next presenter is Dr. Bennett Kotler, who earned a BA in biology from Boston University and a PhD from Cornell University in environmental toxicology. Bennett has a long history of work in science education and environmental protection, including air quality, planning, engineering, and remediation. He currently works with the Mill Creek Alliance, is a member of the Rockdale Temple, lives in Oakley with his wife, daughter, 3 cats, and numerous musical instruments, which would make an interesting sextet. Dr. Kotler.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Well, as these slides are coming up, I'll tell you that when Becca Desai, the chairwoman of Faiths Go Green, asked me to participate in this panel, I said, of course. And then she said, great, Bennett, you have 8 minutes. And I felt this was going to be a struggle. It was going to be a challenge to share some of the traditions, culture, history, and spiritual perspectives from nearly 6,000 years of Judaism. Next slide. So I immediately looked for some knowledge, for something from Jewish traditions that would speak to this struggle. And I immediately thought of Jacob, one of our patriarchs who wrestled with an angel of God. And I share that with you for 2 reasons. In the first place, I think it's very telling about Judaism and Jewish practice. We consider it good. We consider it desirable to wrestle with angels. We debate, we discuss. When I was a little boy, my mother said to me that it was good to ask questions, even if she didn't know all the answers to them. And that was really empowering to me. And again, I think that reveals something about Jewish people and the way they think and approach themselves, their community, and their spirituality in relationship to God. The second thing is I thought, this also reveals the first source of information I think of, the first inspiration I think of, is from a patriarch when the panel has been framed as a focus on Mother Nature. So yes, you may see me struggle, and you'll see that Judaism is set in a patriarchy, and we're developing the language and rediscovering elements of our own history and development as they relate to Mother Nature. Next slide. As a Jewish scientist, and to be contrary and to question, I'd like to begin with science. And again, I think that's also revealing that Jewish people, when they think about nature, they're looking for evidence. They're looking for facts, and they may get that from secular settings. I think it's interesting. This is a paper that I consider seminal in understanding humans' impact on our planet. It includes legendary ecosystem scientists of Peter Vitousek and Jane Lubchenco. And notice the language that they use on this paper of human domination of Earth's ecosystems. They conclude we live on a human-dominated planet because of how we've transformed a third to a half of the land. We use more than half of all accessible surface fresh water, and we've changed the composition of the atmosphere of a planet. So we're a global force to be reckoned with. Next slide. And this language, clearly these scientists have come out of a tradition that includes the Jewish tradition. I include this quote from Bereshit, Genesis 1, where it speaks of our domination of the earth. God blessed them and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every living thing that moves on the earth. And that explains the predicament and how we've been treating the earth. Next slide. But on the other hand, in Bereshit chapter 2, it speaks of stewardship of the earth. So one holy book, two perspectives, and it says, and God took the first human and placed this person in the Garden of Eden, le'avodah ulishmeirah, to tend it and to guard it. Next slide. What I'm going to do with the time that I have is focus on a few organizing concepts. The first one I'd like to look at is trees. And trees are found throughout the Torah and writings. There's the tree of knowledge. There's the tree of life. And it's interesting to me, and this is why I like being a panelist for Becca and Faiths Go Green, is yes, it makes me struggle and think. We Jews equate the tree of life with the Torah. In fact, in the image on the right, you can see a Torah, which the scrolls are covered in a sheath and a covering, and the largest letters around a picture of a tree from right to left say Eitz Chaim, tree life, tree of life. And it's curious to me, you would think a holy book would be a tree of knowledge, but we always refer to the Torah as a tree of lives. And I'll have to think about that as a result of this presentation. But yes, trees show up in the Garden of Eden. The olive branch that the dove returned to the ark after the flood, the burning bush, fruit of the vine, fruit of the earth. And then, in fact, we have a holiday, Tu B'Shvat, which is the birthday of trees, where the entire holiday is organized as a celebration of trees, and it's a preview of harvest. Next slide. The harvest itself is mentioned in Leviticus, and we are commanded not to reap to the very edges of our fields, gather the gleanings of your harvest, strip your vineyards bare, or gather the fallen grapes of your vineyard. And the reason is that we are to leave them for the poor and the stranger. And I think this also reveals that many of the references to nature and to natural resources is ethical and moral. In Passover Seders, the holiday that is a harvest festival that's celebrated in the spring, and tells the tale of the Exodus, we reference passages where we have a tradition of welcoming in guests and strangers and new college students and faculty who are new to town, to welcome the stranger to our house because we were once strangers in Egypt. So again, this is how we use stories and writings about nature in how we behave to each other. Next slide. Water in Isaiah is also, again, a metaphor for the Torah when it is written, all who are thirsty come for water. And water appears throughout the Torah in the flood, in Abraham's well, Jonah in the sea, Moses in the rock, Moses parting the sea, and Miriam dancing by the sea. And on the right, I present a set of figures of a female musical ensemble from ancient Judea, part of where modern Israel and Palestine are located, from 8th to 7th centuries. And this is a twofer for me because it also shows that there were centuries when women led the sacred drumming ensembles that were found in Judaism and in other cultures at the time. Next slide. When Jewish people think about food, we have an entire set of laws and rituals which are part of being kosher, of kashrut. And I highlight the shochet, the trained kosher butcher, which not only has to have expertise and be attested to by rabbinical authorities and be qualified, but the language is they also have to be pious. They also have to be an upstanding person, a good person, which is what a mensch is. But yes, in addition to the expertise is the way they behave. And there was a point in time when they were a significant member of the community, and it is all about ethics and minimizing cruelty and pain to animals. Next slide. And with this last item that I'm going to discuss, everything from this page references Hillel, who is a legendary rabbi and founded the school of Hillel, which eventually were seminal in writing the Talmud, which is about 2,700 pages of commentary on the 670 pages of the Torah itself. So it's a great body of knowledge. Sometimes I think it's our New Testament to our Torah, which references the Old Testament. And Hillel was an Iraqi and was in Babylon at that time. And you may be familiar with two quotes from him. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? So again, probing our identity and our relationship to our community. And I see this as being critical as we tackle large-scale environmental problems that go well beyond the individual and what each one of us do. It's really about what we do in larger communities. The second quote that I include on this is the Jewish variation on the Golden Rule, which is, that which is hateful to you, do not do unto others. That is the whole Torah, and the rest is commentary. Next slide. And with that, I'll end this presentation. And I include information about how you can find me at the Mill Creek as I do my day job, restoring the environment in Cincinnati.
Okay, well, hey, Bennett, thank you for giving us insight into your faith's perspectives about nature and how we can relate to it and it to us. I'm also looking forward to a performance of your family sextet.
Great.
And folks, we do have some questions out there, so don't wait too long. We're only going to pick the most entertaining ones. No, just kidding. Okay, our next speaker is Dr. Carol Jean, everybody calls her CJ, Willie, who is a Sister of Charity here in Cincinnati. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology, a master's degree in reading, and a PhD in multicultural education. She has extensive experience working cross-culturally throughout the United States, the Caribbean, Latin America, Africa, Asia, and Europe. She served 2 terms as the NGO representative at the United Nations for the Sisters of Charity Federation prior to her current ministry as the program director for the Earth Connection Environmental Center, which is sponsored by the Sisters of Charity. CJ also continues to work internationally in the areas of microfinancing, teacher training, cultural diversity, and sustainability. Dr. Willie.
Thank you, Steve. When Becca first asked me to do this, I thought, speaking for all Christians is not an easy thing to do because there are so many different Christian traditions. Christianity is considered the world's largest religion if you put everyone together, with billions of adherents and differences in Christian denominations worldwide. But each denomination has its own beliefs and practices, which often differ one from the other. Next slide, please. Okay, this is simply an example of many of the adherents of Christianity throughout the world. There are others. So to try to say what each of them believes would have been an impossible task. However, I stopped and I thought, next slide, please. What is common belief among Christians? And so basically, the common belief that all Christians share is in Jesus as the Son of God, who came down to earth to show us how to live, who was crucified, died, and was buried, and rose again. We also all adhere to a belief in the Bible as the Word of God. Next slide, please. But as I thought about what I wanted to share, please go back one. Okay. I realized that we are coming up to the season of creation, and this is a celebration that all Christians share. It's an annual Christian celebration to pray and respond together to the cry of creation. The ecumenical family around the world unites to listen and care for our common home. And so I wanted you to know also that there is an entire guidebook called the Celebration Guide to Hope and Act with Creation, which is over 40 pages long and has multiple ideas for what your congregation might do. And this does not have to be restricted to just Christians. There are ideas for how to celebrate during liturgies. There are suggested prayers. There are a host of ecumenical prayer services. There are other suggestions as to what you might do with children, what you might do with the grounds around your center of worship. And you might want to organize a creation walk or a pilgrimage. But there are many, many ideas given throughout, so I encourage you to just take a look at it. It's simply seasonofcreation.org. Next slide, please. So in the preface to this document, it talks about how all followers of Christian from around the globe, we all share a common call to care for creation. We are called to co-create and be a part of all that God has made. Our well-being is interwoven with the well-being of Earth. Next slide. The season of creation actually started 35 years ago by the late ecumenical patriarch Demetrius of the Greek Orthodox tradition. And he invited all people of goodwill to dedicate September 1st as a special day of prayer for the preservation of the natural environment. Next slide, please. And that ultimately became the season of creation, which has been adopted by all Christian traditions, which extends from September 1st to October 4th, which is the feast of St. Francis, the patron saint of ecology. Next slide, please. And the current ecumenical patriarch Bartholomew has worked very closely with Pope Francis and the leaders of other traditions. And he says this sense of ecumenical conviction and Christian unity is paramount, not only because we have been commanded by our Lord that we may be one, but also because we cannot and should not hope to address climate change without working closely with one another. Creation care is a collective mandate and responsibility. Next slide, please. In 2015, Pope Francis wrote an encyclical entitled Laudato Si, which means praise be to you, my Lord. Now, an encyclical is generally a letter written to the Catholic faithful by the Pope. However, this encyclical was written to the people of planet Earth, to all people of every tradition. And in it, he states 14 times all creatures are connected, and each must be cherished with love and respect. For all of us as living creatures are dependent on one another. And he says, despite all attempts to deny, conceal, gloss over, or relativize the issue, the signs of climate change are here and increasingly evident. Next slide, please. The World Methodist Council commended the celebration of a time for creation, again from September 1st to October 4th. And they said, let's celebrate with St. Paul the Spirit's role as midwife through the threefold sequence of the holy groaning of creation, as Mother Earth, of the Spirit as midwife, and of believers as the adopted children of God. Next slide, please. Most Reverend Justin Welby, who is the Archbishop of Canterbury of the Elder Anglican community, has said, in the face of the climate crisis, protecting God's creation is a spiritual imperative throughout the global church. Next slide, please. The Lutheran Federation affirms that as churches in ongoing reformation, we are called to work for peace in the world between people, countries, and with the whole of creation. Now, even though I can only quote a few of what people are saying, every one of these Christian traditions has within their sphere an understanding of the beauty of creation, of the fact that we are called to be co-creators and to work together. And that includes people in all parts of the world, as this next slide will show, which is from the Secretary General of the Middle East Council of Churches. And he said, we should not disappoint the Creator by spoiling his creation, with which he entrusted us from the dawn of time, and keeps protecting us from ourselves. A paradigm shift is of utmost necessity. And so, as you can see, what each of these church leaders has said is this is not something just for our individual traditions. This is something we share in common. The earth belongs to all of us. And that's what Pope Francis was clearly trying to say in his encyclical Laudato Si. And very recently, the Islamic tradition published a document called Al-Misan, which is, again, a covenant for the earth, and expresses so clearly how Muslims are called. And yet, as I read that and compared it to Laudato Si, each could have written the other's document because they're saying the same kinds of things, that we are called to be co-creators. You know, for 1,000 years, people believed creation took place in 7 days. Gradually, we moved away from that understanding. But today, with the Hubble telescope first and currently the Webb telescope, we are learning that creation isn't finished. It's ongoing. And we are part of that ongoing creation. Next slide, please. And so this season of creation, all Christian denominations are being asked to unite our Christian voices through a joint advocacy initiative to support the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty, which calls for a halt to new fossil fuel projects. Next slide, please. So you are invited to celebrate with your faith community this year's season of creation, to hope and act with creation, with ideas, with prayers, with activities. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a free celebration guide available with multiple ideas of what you might do. And one is to bring different faith traditions together, to bring other houses of worship in your area and to celebrate creation together, to celebrate a liturgy outdoors or a prayer service outdoors, to take a nature walk, to remind ourselves each and every day that creation is a gift to all of us. You might also check out the Faith Communities Go Green website at fcgg.org, which has many ideas, not simply restricted to the Christian faith. And I wanted to end with that to say, this is currently a Christian celebration, but what if we made Cincinnati the first city to make it an interfaith celebration? I recently returned from Africa, where I travel fairly frequently to work with microfinancing and teacher training. And each time I go there, I am always amazed at the people's understanding of how to work together. And I work with people in the Kibera slums, the Mathare Valley slums, who have absolutely nothing by our standards. But what they do have, they share. And it comes from the African wisdom of Ubuntu, which teaches us that the sense of self is shaped by family to care for, is shaped by relationship with others. And they frequently will say, I am because you are. And this document on the season of creation ends with this quote: it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a cosmic family to care for creation. I am because we are. The same goes with creation. We are nature. Nature is us. We are God's hands for global and cosmic justice and called to work together. Thank you.
Thank you, CJ. You gave a wonderful presentation. Thank you. Dear friends in the audience, I'm not supposed to be here today, but I'm here to take place of our friend and panelist, Shaheen Tour, who was supposed to be one of our panelists in today's program. But for some reason, Shaheen is not able to be with us. So I'm going to honor the work she has done to represent Islam and its connection with nature and how the Islamic faith honors and reveres nature. So Joy, could you please put her presentation on? To give you a little bit of information about Shaheen, she's a Pakistani-American Muslim who migrated to the United States in 1975. She has 3 children and is a proud grandmother of 5 grandchildren. She is a retired school teacher and a high school and a middle school counselor. And she loves to read, garden, paint, and travel. And in her spare time, she does a lot of volunteering. So this is what she had to share with us: nature and its role in the Islamic faith. In the Holy Quran, nature is frequently mentioned in its chapters and is a sign and a creation of God. There are over 6,000 verses in the Holy Quran, of which more than 500 deal with the natural phenomena. Allah, the Almighty, repeatedly calls on mankind to reflect on his signs. Each include all aspects of nature, such as trees, mountains, seas, animals, birds, stars, the sun, and the moon, and our own hearts. The Islamic obligatory 5 daily prayers, as mentioned in the Holy Quran, clearly reflect the Islam and nature connection. Recited all day, every day: Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, which are dawn, midday, afternoon, sunset, and night. She would like to share with us that she would have liked to mention a few verses of many which are written in their holy book for the Muslims to reflect upon nature. So in Surah or a chapter, 13 sections 2, verses 2 and 4, it says, God is He who has raised the heavens without any pillars that you can see, is firmly established on the throne of authority. He has subjected the sun and the moon to his law. Each one runs its course for a term appointed. And it is he who spread out the earth and set there on mountains, standing firm and flowing rivers and fruit of every kind. He made pairs 2 and 2. He draweth the night as a veil over the day. Behold, in these things are signs for those who consider. Nature is ultimately a sign of God's magnificence. She'd also like to share some of her favorite verses from Surah or chapter 55, verses 10 through 13. It is He who has spread out the earth for His creations. Therein is fruit and date palms, also corn with its leaves and stalk for fodder, and sweet-smelling plants. Then which favors of your Lord will you deny? According to Islamic teachings, all living things, not just humans, have a right to share in nature's basic elements: water, fire, wood, and light. The Quran and the Prophet's Sunnah and traditions are considered a guiding light in promoting the concept of sustainable development in Islamic countries and the world. The Quran refers to the concept of the environment and the essential principles for preserving it, as it sets general rules that determine the extent to which humans benefit from various natural resources, instructing human beings to avoid misusing natural resources and abstain from any action that would destroy and degrade the environment. And here in this picture it says, and Allah has sent down rain from the sky and given life thereby to the earth after its lifelessness. Indeed, in that is a sign for a people who listen. And there are two other verses in these two pictures here. In Surah Al-An'am, there is no animal that walks upon the earth, nor a bird that flies with its 2 wings, but they are like yourselves. We have not neglected anything in the book, and then to their Lord shall they be gathered. And in Surah Al-Nahl, eat of all the fruits and walk in the ways of your Lord submissively. There comes forth from within it a beverage of many colors in which there is healing for men. Most surely there is a sign in this life of bees for a people who reflect. God Almighty has provided us with His world for us to live in, enjoy the fruits and other resources for our sustainability. As Muslims, Shaheen and her community believe that God created us to reflect on the creation and glorify God for His many creations, while knowing that there is one Creator. This world and its resources are responsible and preserving and protecting the environment and passing on the baton to the next generation so that they may continue to ponder and glorify God. And as CJ just mentioned, a covenant that they just declared, the Al-Mizan, I'm going to put the link to that in the chat for you all to read if you're interested. Thank you, Joey.
Okay, in these troubled times, it's wonderful to learn about how sincere believers of dynamic faith demonstrate and share their mutual love of the same God through expressions of the love and appreciation of nature. So I think we need to thank all the wonderful panelists here, but now we have to test them and ask questions. So let me see. First question is for Mr. Desai. How old is the earth according to Zoroastrianism?
So if we go back to the teachings of our prophet Zarathustra, he doesn't go into anything that he doesn't know. It's a very rational teaching. But later on, people speculated on how old our earth is, and we are in a time where good and evil are in conflict. And they talk about some thousands of years where this will continue and then the earth will become better. But nobody takes it literally in that sense, because as I had mentioned, our religion is supposed to be a progressive religion. As you learn, you evolve your thinking.
Okay. Well, I guess is the question for anybody. How does your faith inspire you to personally protect the environment? I kind of think we talked about that, and as you know, each of you did, but does anybody have anything to add there?
Sure, I can go first. So one thing that I have learned is that whenever I take any action, I think about the consequences on the environment and think about, is there any alternative path I can take? And you would be amazed at how many how many more sustainable paths you can come up with if you just put some thought behind it. And I'll give you an example. So I used to do dishes I would rinse dishes with hot water and all. And then I realized that, do I really need to turn on the hot water? Can I not use lukewarm water or, room temperature water? Because using hot water uses resources. So now it has become a habit in me that even when I'm washing my hands, I just use room temperature water. So little things we can do in our lives, if we think through all the actions we take.
I think we've been working as a congregation to reduce our use of meat because we recognize that eating red meat is not healthy for the environment. And also there are some other very simple things which we can do. Like for instance, in washing laundry, as Fred mentioned, you can use cold water for that. It doesn't have to be hot. But there's also now washer sheets, like the dryer sheets. And they're now being sold even at Walmart. You used to have to order them, but now even Walmart sells them. And it's called Earth Breeze. And it's just a simple sheet you drop into the washer and it turns into detergent. You don't have plastic bottles. So it makes it very easy to eliminate an awful lot of plastic. As we look at the amount of plastic that is in our environment. In a recent film I saw on plastic, they were talking about the fact that microplastics are actually being transmitted from mothers to babies now through their milk. And that's kind of scary. And so to become more conscious of what we use and how we use it. How do we use resources? There's a line in Laudato Si, which every time I go to the store, I think of, because it says, buying is always a moral act, not just an economic act. And it makes me stop and think, do I really need this?
I think about the words of Hillel. So perhaps that is something that informs me, this idea of community. And if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? And if I'm only for myself, what am I? And if not now, then when? So there's an urgency to the action. And among the things that I'm very interested in are plants and trees and their power and nature's power. And nature is actually foundation to our entire human world of our whole human economy takes place on a foundation of a natural economy. And so I'm interested and marvel at the restoration of plants and trees, but using Hillel's approach of, if I can plant 1 or 10 or 25 trees, if I can get 5 or 10 people, then the impacts can be that much larger. The community changes and the world changes.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, now somebody asked if this session is going to be recorded, and I understand it's going right now to YouTube, and that it will also be available on the equation.org. That's EQUASION.org. I believe it's on that site. I guess, okay, I think I'm right. Somebody asked, I guess this is for Fred, where can the picture having the names of the months be found?
I think Joey can put it in the chat because he has a link to it.
Okay. All righty, good. Let's see here. Okay, let me ask this question. Oh, somebody would like to know, let's see here. This is for Fred. How does nature influence diet? Are there things you eat or things you avoid eating?
Yes, so actually that's a very good question. So recently I gave up land meat. Becca had given it up many years ago, but there were a couple of reasons why we did it, and I'll give you my reasons. The first reason is because of the way the animals are treated, and the way they are handled before people eat them. That was one strong reason. And the other reason was the environment. We know that eating meat has such a big impact on the environment. So those things drove us to stop eating land meat. When we look at so in our calendar, I mentioned there are different days which are associated with different creations of nature. So on the day when we respect animals, people don't eat land meat on those days. So like there'll be a couple of days in the month, or actually 4 days in the month when people don't eat land meat. So on the other days, they do eat it.
Okay.
I think along with what Fred is saying in terms of diet and why not to eat, another reason is because red meat simply isn't healthy for you.
Very true.
Mm-hmm. Now, this isn't really a question, but Becca put in the question answer box about Al-Mizan was something that CJ brought up. So you might take a look at that, folks. And it's about very interesting things. Did you want us to talk about that just a bit?
It's really an excellent document. I mentioned Laudato Si, which was the one that Pope Francis wrote. And this is like an Islamic version of that. It's called Al-Mizan, A Covenant for the Earth. And it goes through beautifully saying what the principles and practices are for tending the earth, what Muslims are called to in terms of caring for the earth. So I'd highly recommend taking a look at it. It's about 40, I think it's 52 pages, but it's not a difficult read at all. And you'll find a lot, I think, even with your own tradition, and that's what I think I was trying to say at the end. The Dalai Lama once said, it doesn't matter what religion you are. What matters is that you live deeply out of your tradition, because if you live out of yours and I live out of mine, there'll be a meeting of minds. And I think that's what we're kind of discovering around this whole issue with the climate. The earth belongs to all of us. None of us has all the answers, but imagine what we could do if we work together.
Okay, here's another question for everyone. What are the teachings of your faith about human interaction with mineral, plant, and animal life? Any takers?
Well, I'll start. the first man in Judaism is Adam, in Hebrew, Adam, and Adam it is the word for the color red, and Adama is the female version of that word, and that means soil. It means earth. And the notion that we come from the earth and that we return to the earth. So, yeah, in these words, and we can see perspectives on gender and our relationship. Am I doing vegetable and animal as well?
Sure.
Again, there was so much to say about traditions and holidays, and when I think about how each holiday evokes smells and scents, Sukkot is holiday celebrating transition in the desert after the Exodus, and we eat meals in huts where we can see the sky that we build in our backyards, and it's filled with various plants from each of the seasons, and there's etrog and lulav that are all a part of it. Special citrus fruits and greens that are used. Passover tables is a feast of freedom, but it's filled with all allegorical items of greens and egg and salt water, of which can each one has meaning and representation, and all these things come from nature.
Steve, I can say something. So I go back to Zarathustra's message about order in nature. I mean, it's so important to keep everything in the right perspective, use just as much as you need. Anytime you overuse something or the other goes wrong. So, maintaining harmony in nature, not just with plants and animals, but even with minerals, is very important for us to do.
I think, I think we believe that all living entities have integrity because they were created by God. And they were created for our use, not for our exploitation. During the number of years I was at the United Nations, each year there was a 2-week forum on the rights of the indigenous. And thousands of indigenous from around the world participated in that. And each year we would be talking about the environment, and each year they would say the same thing to us. You keep talking about the environment, but nobody's talking to us. We've been taking care of it for thousands of years. And I think we're just beginning to wake up to listening to those voices and to recognize that our own traditions are calling us to what they've been doing for thousands of years. In terms of minerals, having worked in Africa and seeing the exploitation of the natural resources and seeing 5-year-olds who are forced to work in mines, it's a horrible thing. That's not what the minerals are there for. They're not for exploitation. And so I think we have to look at the chains of things that we use and ask ourselves, is it sustainable? And it's not right now.
Well, folks, I guess we're just about out of time. So I guess I'll ask each of you if you'd like to make a final brief remark. So why don't we go in order our presenters? That would be Fred, then Bennett, and then CJ.
So one message that I would like to give people is no green step is too small to take. Just keep that in mind. Whatever little you can do in your lives, and you will inspire other people to do it. Another thing I would urge you to look at the Eco Challenge. Eco Challenge has helped Becca and me a lot in terms of how we've transformed our lives and made a lot of changes in our lives. So I would urge you to look at it. Usually it comes out on FCGG's website when the challenges are up. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank you for organizing this. And yeah, I feel like I've got a new brother and sister. And that, yeah, that we really do share the same message, same perspective, and wrestle with some of the same ideas. And I think it's ultimately seeing the connection between each of us, each other's, and then the natural world as well. And ultimately, yeah, that we're not apart from nature, but that we're a part of it.
And I think I would certainly concur with what Fred and Bennett said. And I think I would add that I think we are recognizing the importance of working together. And I would really challenge us to look at how we can link our various traditions and how in our own Cincinnati area, how we can come together around issues of environmental sustainability.
Well, wonderful talks, folks. Great seeing everybody. And everybody out there, thank you for coming. So I guess that's our session. We'll say good night to you then.
Thank you.
Thank you.